Hey guys, today we're going to talk about Australia and New Zealand cultural geography. So we're going to get into some of the kind of quirky things they do and some of the interesting customs and that they have. So here we go. All right, so population patterns. So um, the indigenous people to Australia are known as Aborigines. This top picture here is of them, this one right here. They're the world's oldest surviving culture. So they arrived in Australia between 40 to 60,000 years ago, and today they make up about 2% of the population. There are two different groups of Aborigines. The first group is the Arrente. This is the larger group, and this is the group that you see more often. But they believe they have a direct relationship to the landscape. So they believe in what's called dream time. So dream time, it's a system of beliefs that connects them back to the beginning of time. So it's kind of like a state of being when they get into dream time that they're connected to everything that ever existed. Okay, so every plant, every animal, every person, every rock, everything. Okay, so they're connected to the earth. And then the other group is called the Palawa. Now, these guys mostly just live on the island of Tasmania. So, Tasmania is the island that's just south of mainland Australia. And they've been around there for about 32,000 years. Um, in New Zealand, the indigenous group is known as the Maori. And they come from Polynesia. Okay, so the Maori basically migrated to their. You remember we talked about the Asian immigrants or Asian migrants, I guess, uh, moved down into like Papua New Guinea, and then they moved down into New Zealand and other parts of Polynesia. So these people live by hunting, fishing, and raising crops. Many other traditions still exist, and I'm going to show you at the end of this video um, one of them, and it's called the haka, that they do before every sporting event. So we're going to watch the rugby team perform the haka at the end of this. Um, and then basically everybody else that lives in this area are Europeans or Asians. So Europeans began colonizing Australia in the late 1500s. Everybody understands that it used to be a penal colony of the British, so there's a lot of British people there. But Asians have been recruited by Australia to migrate to Australia in recent years. So they have been trying to get more people to live there in Australia. So okay. Oh, one thing I did want to show you. This is a population density map of New Zealand, and in the green parts, that's where nobody lives. So the landscape there is very mountainous and a lot of. It's just not an easy place to live. So if you ever watched Lord of the Rings, if you ever watch those movies, you could see kind of the landscape of New Zealand, and you can see why nobody lives in the green parts. So wherever it's white on that one is where people actually do live. So, okay. So history and government. So the earliest settlers migrated over land bridges during the last ice age. And so early Aborigines at first led a nomadic life. So they organized themselves into clans, which are family groups, which we've talked about before. And they traveled together within ancestral territories. And they would carry baskets, bowls, spears, sticks for digging, and that's it. That's all they had. But one of the things that they often used to hunt was a boomerang. Okay, so this right here is an Aborigine man with a boomerang, and these are sticks that they would throw at whatever they're hunting, try to knock them out, and then they would go kill them. And then women and children, they were the gatherers. So they gathered the plants and the seeds. So it was a very hunter gatherer kind of type of society. Um, Moving over to New Zealand, this guy is a Maori guy. 10th and 14th centuries, they migrated to New Zealand and they started to live in villages and grew traditional root crops that are grown in Oceania, like taro and yams. So one of the things that's going to stick around in regards to culture with the Maori is um, tattoos. But also, you can see he's making kind of like a weird face. So when I show you the video of the haka later, you're gonna notice they do that in the haka too, and so they do that pre-battle to basically to make the people across, the other side across from them looking at them thinking they're just absolutely insane, and so they make those weird faces in that. So that's one of the things we're gonna see in that video too. Okay. Um, so European exploration. So James Cook is going to claim Eastern Australia for Britain. Okay, so James Cook is going to take this red route here. Okay, and he's going to. This is New Zealand here, and then Cook Islands are over here. Um, Obviously, Britain uses it as a penal colony because their old one was Georgia, and that obviously got taken away from them with the American Revolution and independence. And so in 1788, they changed it to Australia. And so by the 1850s, imprisonment had basically ended, and settlers were starting to establish coastal farms and settlements. And most of the population lives on the coast in Australia. The middle part of it is basically one big desert, so most people don't live there. But they on these farms will raise livestock like sheep, for example, were introduced, and they made a lot of money selling wool to Britain. One of the things that Australia is really known for is sheep shearing. It's like a big competition that they do in Australia, and the reason why is because it goes back to this. In the 1850s, gold will be discovered. So there's going to be a gold rush in Australia just shortly after the gold rush here in the United States. So in 1849, there was gold discovered in what is present day San Francisco. And that's why the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers, are named that. But they're going to have a similar gold rush. And so a lot of Asians are going to come in, and they're going to have a lot more wealth and a lot more settlers as a result. Okay. Uh, so the arrival of the Europeans did have a dangerous impact on the indigenous population in Australia and in New Zealand. So they were forcibly removed. They forcibly removed many Aborigines, kind of like they did in North America, where it was they would just push them out of the way. Okay, so what we did here with westward expansion is what they did in Australia. And so they resisted, of course, but diseases and violence will greatly reduce their population, especially diseases like smallpox and polio wiped out a lot of the population. So, like we did in the United States, the Australians placed them in reserves or reservations. Um, the Maori were a bit more of a challenge. So, the Maori, the British introduced new ways of farming and their culture to them, and they adopted some of it. But the Maori are going to resist British rule. They're going to fight for about 15 years, which is, considering you're fighting the British, a pretty long time. And during this time, many Maori are going to die, and they're going to lose even more land to the British. So the British eventually will become victorious in that. All right. Independence. So Australia and New Zealand peacefully won independence in the early 1900s. They basically voted that they didn't want to be part of the United Kingdom anymore, and the United Kingdom said, okay. All right. So it was pretty easy transition. There was no violence. In 1901, Australia will form the Commonwealth of Australia, and so now they're a dominion. Okay, they're considered a dominion. So they are self-governing um, country of the British Empire. They do have a queen. Okay, so their queen is Queen Elizabeth, who's the Queen of England, and they will kind of blend our federal system as far as government goes with Britain's parliamentary democracy. So they are separated into states. So these are the different states of Australia. Okay, so there's 6 states. Well, 7, I guess, Tasmania, but I think Tasmania is part of Victoria. Um, but they have the same rights like our states do here. Okay. In New Zealand, they are also a dominion, and these are their flags, by the way. You can see they both still have the Union Jack, so they're still part of the British Empire. So they have a queen, just like Australia does, just like England does, same queen. 1893, New Zealand became the first country to give women suffrage. And since World War II, their economies and their governments have been linked to the U.S. They've been very good trade partners with the United States. Okay. Um, Moving on to culture. So, education and healthcare. So, both countries provide free compulsory education. They have very good education in both countries. And so they have about a 99% literacy rate. In the Outback, it's really interesting the way students go to school. So, um, they either go to school through mail or through two-way radios. Um, Lately, in some places they still don't have internet, but in places where they do have internet, they'll do kind of like we're doing right now, where teachers will give them lessons and then they'll do them and then they'll send them in. Um, it's difficult because in the Outback, people are so spread out. I mean, it's like really spread out. Um, Both countries have quality healthcare, which is important. Some parts, like in the Outback, for example, the rugged terrain and the long distances make healthcare difficult. So what happens is if you really need a doctor, you usually access them the way you do education, where you will use your two-way radio, or even if it's an emergency, they have mobile clinics that will go around, that kind of move around the Outback, and they'll have doctors in that. Uh, Basically, it's like a ambulance, like a big ambulance, where they'll have a doctor on it and they'll go and treat people. Um, Indigenous people don't actually receive any of these benefits, so they've separated themselves politically from Australia, from New Zealand government that exists. But like I said, they're about 2% of the population, so a very small part. But they have a lot of poverty, malnutrition, unemployment. So the government and then other private organizations have been working to help them. And then also courts are do recognize the claims of the Aborigines to government assistance to land and to resources. So they are doing what they can to help basically bridge that gap. Okay. Um, so language. English obviously is the major language. In Australia, they have Australian English is basically their dialect. It's also known as Strine because Australia is really good at like shortening down words, so they have very unique vocabulary. So, for example, these right here. So, a Barbie is what they would call a barbecue. A Sheila is what they would call a woman. Ridgy is something that's original. That I don't know why that cut off like that. It's something original or genuine. If you're mad as a cut snake, you're angry, or if you chuck a sickie, you're calling in sick when you're really healthy. Okay, so you're basically playing hooky. So they have a lot of different words that they use that are different from what we use. So, but we do as well. Like we use words that are different from what the English use. So like a cop here or a policeman is called a bobby in England. So it's just different dialects. So the Maori is also spoken in certain areas of New Zealand, obviously by the Maori. As far as religion goes, they're mostly Christian. So, but the indigenous peoples do focus on their relationship with humans and nature. So, like I said, the Aborigines believe in dream time. So, basically, what that is they go back to a time when they say that wandering spirits created land, plants, animals, and humans. So, everything that ever existed, everything is all interrelated. So, that includes like rocks, trees, humans, plants, animals, like everybody. Everything has a spirit and they're all interrelated. And they go back to that time when everything was one, basically. And then, like I said, for the most part, Australians and New Zealanders are Christian. Okay, that's the biggest, um, biggest religion in both, but they do have freedom of religion in both countries, so they can practice any religion, and obviously others are practiced, but it's mostly Christian. Okay. Couple did you know? So they didn't have like a sports and leisure section, so I figured I'd include this. So rugby is the most popular sport in New Zealand. In Australia, they play a similar sport to rugby. It's called Australian rules football, and it's really similar to rugby. It's just a little bit different. A couple of the rules are a little bit different. New Zealanders also like to play soccer and netball. Netball is this right here. It's basically like basketball, but there's no dribbling and there's no backboard, and it's a little different sport. Um, New Zealanders like to eat hamburgers with fried eggs and a beet slice. Okay, so that's this. It actually looks kind of good. I'm not sure about the beet, but the egg sounds delicious to me. And then students can choose whether or not to attend a co-ed high school or a all-girl boys school. This is in New Zealand as well, where they can choose basically which one they want, which kind of school they want to do. They can do either or. All right. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple videos. So this first video, they're both of the Haka. This first one has a translation, so you can see it's going to be like right here. And then the next one is, I'll explain when this first one's over. Okay.
The challenge has been made.
Okay, so that was a Haka, and that's, like I said, something they do before all competitions, and it used to be what they would do before they would go into battle. So you could see it's basically what they're saying. That's Maori, by the way, is what they're speaking. Um, you can see that is used to intimidate the other side. Okay, so this next video is going to be, it's also very short. This one is a Samoan Haka, and then they're going to show the All Blacks, or the New Zealander team is called the All Blacks because they wear all black all the time. So we'll see the Samoan Haka, which is a little bit different, and then we'll see the All Blacks again. This one is not translated, so. Okay, so you can see a little bit different in the two different styles of the Haka. Obviously, the blue was the Samoan team, and then the All Blacks was the New Zealander All Blacks team. One interesting story before I let you go: when I was in college. I was playing softball, and there was right next to us that there was the New Zealand national fast pitch team, men's fast pitch team was getting ready to play the U.S. national fast pitch team, and everybody in the whole complex just stopped because the New Zealanders, who they wear all black too, um, in every sport that they play, but the New Zealanders were performing the haka. So I'll tell you what, it's pretty cool in person. It's very intimidating and it's very loud. It's amazing how much they get their voices to really um, to really boom, So it was a really cool experience. But if you ever get a chance to see a game or a match of any like rugby or any New Zealand team, get there early and watch the haka because it's a really cool experience. So, anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys all have a good day. Processor is 10 test questions, so make sure 5 of them are multiple choice and make sure you answer them. Okay? And then share that with me as soon as you get it done. Have a good one, guys.